Some of history's greatest engineering marvels should not exist with the technology of their time. This video explores 28 unsolved engineering feats that rewrite the entire story of ancient technology. You will discover how structures and artifacts around the world were built using methods we still cannot replicate today. How did ancient builders move stones heavier than 3 jumbo jets? Why does a 2,000-year-old iron pillar never rust? By the end, your understanding of human history and its lost capabilities will be fundamentally transformed. What do you believe our ancestors were truly capable of? Corroded and encrusted, it lay unnoticed for decades among the treasures of a Roman shipwreck. What divers had initially dismissed as a lump of rock and decayed metal would later be recognized as the single most baffling artifact from the ancient world. This is the Antikythera Mechanism. Created over 2,000 years ago, this intricate bronze device was, in essence, a hand-powered analog computer. Its complex clockwork of at least 30 interlocking meshing gears was housed in a wooden case operated by a hand crank and displayed a vision of the cosmos that was breathtakingly precise. It could predict the movements of the sun and the moon, chart the positions of planets, and even forecast upcoming eclipses. It modeled the irregular orbit of the moon so accurately that it accounted for the subtle wobbles in its path, a mathematical feat of extraordinary complexity. The most shocking part of its design is a component known as a differential gear. This is not a simple set of spinning cogs. A differential gear allows for the calculation of differences in rotational speed, and it is the very same principle found in the axles of modern automobiles. Until the Antikythera mechanism was understood, historians of technology were certain the differential gear was an invention of the 16th century. This one device single-handedly forces us to reconsider an entire thread of human ingenuity. How could such advanced computational technology have been developed, used, and then lost for well over a millennium? It stands as a silent, corroded question mark, challenging everything we thought we knew about the timeline of human innovation. Yet this level of technological sophistication was not isolated to intricate clockwork. Half a world away and centuries earlier, another structure demonstrates a mastery of precision so absolute it defies belief. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a monument of staggering scale, but its true genius lies in the microscopic details of its construction. Built over 4,000 years ago, its 4 sides are aligned to the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west with an accuracy that seems impossible. The north-south axis deviates by a mere 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that into perspective, that is a finer margin of error than most modern architects could achieve without satellite technology. Now consider its foundation. The entire base, covering an area of 13 acres, is leveled to within less than 1 inch. This is not a small patio or a single room, but a colossal platform built on shifting desert sands. Each of the millions of stone blocks was cut and placed with such care that the gaps between them are often no wider than a millimeter, thinner than a credit card. How could a civilization using copper chisels and stone hammers, with no known advanced mathematics or surveying tools, accomplish this? The builders left behind no blueprints, no engineering notes, only the silent, overwhelming proof of their work. This is not merely a tomb of a pharaoh, it is a permanent question carved in limestone, demanding to know what methods and knowledge have been lost to time. This same obsession with impossible precision is carved into the very stones of a Bolivian plateau. At Puma Punku, the scale is smaller than the Great Pyramid, but the mystery is somehow even more profound. Here, shattered across the landscape, lie stone blocks that look less like ancient ruins and more like components from a colossal, disassembled machine. These are not simple, rough-hewn rocks. They are enormous geometric puzzles, some weighing over 130 tons, shaped with a level of exactness that feels alien. The stone used is andesite, a rock so hard it ranks just below diamond on the scale of mineral hardness. Yet, the surfaces of these blocks are flawlessly smooth, their edges razor-sharp and perfectly straight. They were cut into complex, interlocking shapes, with H-shaped slots, precise channels, and dovetail joints that would be difficult to produce even with today's computer-controlled machinery. The true enigma lies in the sheer consistency. Hundreds of these stones exist, and each identical H-block or notched corner matches the next with microscopic tolerance. This is not the work of individual artisans using hand tools. It is the hallmark of mass production. It suggests the use of standardized templates, a concept we associate with industrial manufacturing. How do you achieve such uniformity without metal tools, without even a written language to record the blueprints? The stones themselves offer no clues, no chisel marks, no signs of grinding or pounding. They are simply perfect, as if they were molded rather than carved. This leaves us with a haunting question. Were the builders of Puma Punku using a lost technology, a method of working stone that we have not yet rediscovered? The ruins stand as a silent, geometric language we can no longer decipher. The silent, geometric puzzles of Puma Punku give way to a different kind of awe in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon. Here at Baalbek, the sheer brute force of ancient engineering becomes almost overwhelming. The foundation wall of the Roman temple complex holds 3 limestone blocks known as the trilithon, each one a behemoth weighing around 800 tons. That is the equivalent of 2 fully loaded jumbo jets for every single stone. They were quarried from a site over a mile away, dragged to this location, and then hoisted over 20 feet into the air to be fitted together with seams so tight you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. Yet even these giants are overshadowed by what was left behind. In a nearby quarry rests the stone of the pregnant woman, a single, partially extracted block of stone estimated to weigh 1,650 tons. It is the largest known worked stone from the entire ancient world, a monument to an ambition that was never fully realized. The Romans are credited with building the temples atop this foundation, but the staggering scale of these base stones predates them. The fundamental question is not just how they were moved, but why. What compelled these ancient builders to undertake a task of such monumental difficulty, to quarry and attempt to lift a mass equal to 3 Boeing 747 aircraft? The known technology of the era, using ropes, wooden rollers, and manpower, seems utterly inadequate for the challenge. This foundation of giants stands as a direct physical challenge to our historical timeline, forcing us to ask if we have underestimated the capabilities of the builders who came before Rome. From the colossal stones of Baalbek, we journey to a landscape where engineering ambition was expressed not in mass, but in impossible scale and perfect geometry etched upon the earth itself. The Nazca Desert of Peru is a vast canvas of reddish-brown rock and sand, and upon it, a civilization created a gallery so enormous it can only be comprehended from the sky. Stretching for miles are razor-straight lines that run perfectly parallel for incredible distances. Interspersed with these are immense geometric shapes, trapezoids and triangles that seem to have been drawn with a giant's ruler. Most astonishing are the animal figures: a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider, a monkey with a coiled tail, each one over 1,200 feet long. Every curve and angle of these creatures is in perfect proportion, a feat of mathematical scaling that would be challenging on a small sheet of paper, let alone on a landscape that dwarfs the modern runway of a major airport. The creators, the Nazca people, accomplished this between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after, working without the ability to ever see their own work from the perspective that makes it understandable. From the ground, you would see only a shallow trench, a foot or two deep, scraped into the desert pavement. You would be standing inside a line, unable to perceive the shape you are creating. How did they achieve such precision across miles of uneven, hilly terrain without aerial guidance? The prevailing theory suggests they could have used a system of stakes and ropes to plot out the design section by section. Yet, to maintain perfect straightness and proportion over such vast distances, even a small angular error at the starting point would result in a deviation of hundreds of feet by the end. This implies a level of surveying knowledge that rivals modern engineering, a profound understanding of geometry and alignment that should not have existed in this part of the world 2,000 years ago. Furthermore, the lines have endured for well over a millennium. The Nazca understood their environment intimately. They carefully removed the dark, sun-baked top layer of pebbles to expose the lighter-colored sand beneath, creating a visual contrast. In doing so, they also manipulated the local geology. The exposed layer is high in gypsum, which hardens when exposed to moisture from the rare desert fogs, cementing the lines in place and protecting them from the wind. This was not random scraping. It was a deliberate and brilliantly conceived act of geological engineering designed for permanence. The result is a puzzle that has survived the very people who made it, leaving us to wonder if these giant drawings were meant as messages to the gods, a celestial calendar, or perhaps something else entirely, a permanent signature from a people whose full capabilities remain just out of reach. While the Nazca lines were engineered to last through an understanding of the desert itself, another ancient civilization mastered a material that has actively fought back against the sea for 2,000 years. Along the Mediterranean coast, Roman piers and breakwaters still stand firm in the surf, their concrete structures defying the corrosive power of salt water that causes modern counterparts to crumble in mere decades. This is no lucky accident. Modern scientists have discovered that Roman concrete possesses a seemingly magical ability to heal itself. The secret lies in tiny, white chunks of lime scattered throughout the mixture. For years, these inclusions were dismissed as evidence of sloppy mixing, but we now know they are the material's genius. When seawater seeps into a crack, it reacts with these lime clasts, triggering a chemical process that forms new, crystalline minerals. These minerals effectively glue the crack shut, repairing the damage from within. This self-healing property was not the only advantage. The Romans created their concrete with a specific recipe of volcanic ash, lime, and, crucially, seawater. This combination produced a rare chemical reaction that actually strengthened the bond of the concrete over centuries, making it grow more resilient where modern concrete steadily weakens. This sophisticated form of material science appears to have vanished after the fall of the Roman Empire. Medieval and later builders could not replicate this legendary durability, their own structures failing while the Roman works endured. Today, engineers are racing to decode the full formula, knowing that its principles could revolutionize our own seawalls and infrastructure. Yet, despite our advanced laboratories, we still do not grasp every intricate factor that made this ancient material so exceptionally long-lasting. The Romans built for eternity with a knowledge we are still struggling to reclaim. Yet the challenge of moving impossible weights was not confined to the continents. On a remote, wind-swept island in the vast Pacific Ocean, a different civilization performed a feat of logistical magic. Easter Island is dotted with nearly 900 massive stone figures, the Moai, their stern gazes fixed inland. Each of these giants was carved from compressed volcanic ash at a single quarry in the heart of the island. The real mystery, however, is not their creation, but their journey. Somehow, the Rapa Nui people transported these colossal statues, some weighing over 80 tons, for miles across rugged, hilly terrain to stone platforms along the entire coastline. They accomplished this without the wheel, without large animals to pull them, and on an island with very few trees to provide lumber. How did they do it? One compelling theory, tested in modern experiments, suggests the statues were not dragged but walked. Using a system of ropes, teams of people could have rocked a moai from side to side, carefully inching it forward with each tilt. This method would make the statue appear to walk majestically across the landscape, a powerful and awe-inspiring sight. But this technique is incredibly risky. A single misstep, one moment of lost coordination, and the multi-ton figure would come crashing down, shattering upon the rock-strewn ground. The island is littered with abandoned moai that fell during their journey, silent testaments to the immense danger involved. Other theories propose elaborate networks of log rollers or sledges greased with sweet potatoes, yet each solution introduces new problems. The island's resources were finite, and the sheer scale of the operation would have consumed vast quantities of wood and rope. This transportation enigma is more than an engineering puzzle. It is a story of a people's profound determination. The movement of the moai represents an incredible societal effort, a cultural imperative so powerful it drove a community to achieve what seems, even to us today, nearly impossible. The same principle of moving mountains with impossible precision echoes high in the Andes. At the Sacsayhuaman fortress in Peru, the stones themselves seem to defy logic. These are not simple rectangular blocks, but enormous, irregular polygons of limestone, some heavier than a fully grown blue whale. Each one is a unique, three-dimensional puzzle piece, carved with bizarre angles and subtle curves. Yet, when assembled, they fit together so perfectly that the seams are virtually invisible. You cannot slide a razor blade or even a single piece of paper between them. This incredible precision was achieved entirely without mortar. The walls rely solely on the genius of their interlocking shapes for stability, and they have proven their worth for centuries, surviving powerful earthquakes that have toppled the Spanish colonial buildings constructed right beside them. The Spanish used simple, rectangular stones and mortar, a method that proved far less resilient than the ancient Incan design. The subtle, rounded angles and complex joints of the Sacsayhuaman stones actually allow the entire wall to shift and settle during a quake, moving as a single, flexible unit instead of cracking apart. This reveals an advanced, almost intuitive understanding of seismic engineering, a knowledge of how to make stone dance with the Earth's tremors rather than fight them. The greatest mystery, however, is how they were carved. The official history says the Inca used only stone hammers and bronze chisels, tools that seem utterly incapable of such fine work on such a colossal scale. How do you carve a 100-ton block with such intricate, irregular facets that it locks perfectly with its neighbors on all sides? Modern engineers have tried to replicate the technique using only the presumed ancient tools, and they have failed completely. Their blocks are crude and ill-fitting by comparison. The stones of Sacsayhuaman show no clear tool marks, no evidence of grinding or pounding. They are simply, bafflingly perfect. This was more than a fortress. It was a masterpiece of a stoneworking technology that we still cannot explain, a silent testament to a lost art of shaping the very bones of the earth. While the Incas mastered stone to dance with earthquakes, another civilization performed a different kind of alchemy, turning common iron into a metal that defies time itself. In the heart of Delhi, a 23-foot-tall iron pillar has stood completely exposed to sun, rain, and wind for over 1,600 years. It should be a crumbling, rust-eaten relic, yet its surface remains smooth and remarkably intact, bearing only a faint, dark patina. In a region with a punishing monsoon season, where modern iron structures require constant maintenance and painting to survive decades, this ancient column's resistance to corrosion seems almost supernatural. The secret is not magic, but a stunningly sophisticated understanding of metallurgy that should not have existed in the 4th century. Modern scientific analysis has cracked part of its code. The iron used to forge the pillar possesses a unique chemical recipe. It contains an unusually high amount of phosphorus, while having very low levels of sulfur and manganese. This specific combination was no accident. When the pillar was forged, the phosphorus reacted with the iron and the oxygen in the air, forming a remarkably thin, invisible protective film across its entire surface. This passive layer acts as a shield, preventing moisture and oxygen from penetrating deeper to cause the destructive flaking we know as rust. The real challenge, however, was creating this metal in the first place. To work with such a large mass of iron, the ancient blacksmiths needed to achieve a sustained furnace temperature of around 1,150 degrees Celsius. This is an immense technical hurdle, far beyond the capabilities of simple bloomery furnaces common in that era across the world. They were not just melting iron, they were meticulously controlling its chemical composition on a massive scale, crafting a 7-ton alloy with properties that would not be replicated until the Industrial Revolution over a millennium later. This pillar is not merely a monument, it is a testament to a forgotten school of science. It forces us to wonder what other advanced metalworking techniques were developed, used, and then completely lost to history, leaving behind only this single, rustless sentinel as a clue. High on a sheer cliff face in China's Hengshan Mountains, a structure seems to grow directly from the rock itself. The Hanging Temple is a breathtaking complex of halls, pavilions, and walkways that clings to a vertical precipice, suspended more than 250 feet above the ground. Built over 1,500 years ago, it is a masterpiece of architectural defiance, a place where faith and physics meet in a seemingly impossible balance. It is not anchored by a traditional foundation but is supported instead by a hidden skeleton of oak crossbeams. These thick wooden beams are fitted into holes that were meticulously chiseled directly into the cliff's granite face. The entire structure hangs out from the vertical wall, creating an awe-inspiring illusion that it is floating in mid-air. How could such a delicate-looking building possibly survive for 15 centuries, enduring the relentless forces of gravity, powerful storms, and numerous earthquakes? The secret lies in a brilliant application of mechanical principles that the builders understood intuitively. The design cleverly distributes the temple's weight. The load is transferred from the outer buildings down through the wooden framework and directly into the solid cliff, which acts as the structure's true foundation. This system minimizes the visible support, enhancing the temple's magical appearance while maximizing its stability. The cliff itself absorbs the energy of earthquakes, allowing the flexible wooden frame to sway and settle without collapsing. Consider the sheer human effort required to build it. Workers would have dangled from ropes on that sheer cliff face, swinging in the wind as they carved the precise holes for the beams. They used hand drills and hammers to shape the unforgiving granite, achieving a level of accuracy that would be difficult even with modern power tools and safety harnesses. Every cut had to be perfect, every joint exact, for a single miscalculation in angle or depth would have meant catastrophic failure. This was not merely construction, it was an act of extreme peril and profound belief. The Hanging Temple stands as a permanent challenge to our assumptions, proving that ancient engineers possessed a deep, practical wisdom that allowed them to conquer not just the horizontal plane, but the vertical realm as well. Deep in the arid hills of southeastern Turkey, a discovery was made that shattered the very foundations of human history. Göbekli Tepe is not merely an ancient site, it is an anomaly. Its massive, T-shaped limestone pillars are arranged in great stone circles, each monolith towering over human height and carved with intricate reliefs of foxes, scorpions, and vultures. The sheer artistry is staggering, but the true shock is its age. This temple complex was constructed around 9,600 years before the Common Era. That means it predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid by a full 7 millennia. It was built at a time when humanity was supposedly composed of small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers, people who followed their food and left only simple tools behind. According to everything we thought we knew, these people should not have had the time, the resources, or the social organization to undertake a project of this magnitude. They had no agriculture to provide a food surplus, no domesticated animals for labor, not even the wheel. Yet they quarried, transported, and erected pillars weighing up to 16 tons each. How do you move a stone heavier than 2 full-grown elephants across miles of rugged terrain without beasts of burden or carts? The logistical puzzle is immense. Even more baffling is the sophistication encoded in the stones themselves. The carvings are not primitive scratchings, they are masterful, deep-cut sculptures that have survived for millennia. Furthermore, the arrangement of the pillars suggests they were aligned with celestial bodies, incorporating a rudimentary understanding of astronomy into the architecture. This was not just a place of gathering, it was a complex engineered structure. Göbekli Tepe turns our historical timeline on its head. It suggests that the drive to build monumental structures, to encode knowledge in stone, and to organize large-scale labor may not have been the result of agriculture and settled civilization, but perhaps its very cause. The site stands as a silent, monumental question, forcing us to ask if we have completely misunderstood the origins of technology and society itself. The mathematical precision of Göbekli Tepe finds a strange and sprawling echo on the coast of Brittany. Here, the Carnac alignments present a puzzle not of a single structure, but of a vast, open-air diagram. Nearly 3,000 standing stones march across the French landscape in a series of perfectly parallel lines, a megalithic grid that extends for over 2 miles. Erected around 4,500 years before the Common Era, this is not a random collection of rocks. The stones are arranged with a deliberate, almost obsessive geometric order. They form long, straight avenues, giant rectangles, and subtle curves, all laid out across the rolling terrain. The sheer scale of the labor is staggering. Each of these granite stones had to be quarried, hauled, and set upright by a Neolithic society that had only simple stone tools and immense communal will. Yet the physical effort pales in comparison to the intellectual mystery. How did these ancient people achieve such perfect alignments over such a vast and uneven area? The lines remain straight for incredible distances, maintaining their parallel relationships even as the land dips and rises. This implies the use of advanced surveying techniques that should not have existed for another several thousand years. It suggests a profound understanding of geometry and a method for projecting straight lines across the horizon that we simply cannot replicate with the technology we believe they possessed. Some researchers propose that the entire complex functioned as a sophisticated astronomical calculator, certain alignments appear to point to the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key points in the year, like the solstices. Others see it as a massive ceremonial complex, a place of gathering designed to channel people along these sacred avenues, but the true purpose is still fiercely debated. Was it a calendar, a temple, or something else entirely? The stones offer no written clues, only their silent mathematical formation. They stand as a testament to a lost system of knowledge, a Neolithic science that understood the land and the sky in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The Carnac alignments are not just a collection of old rocks, they are a blueprint for a way of thinking that has long since vanished from the world. Beneath the clear, blue waters off the coast of Japan lies a mystery that blurs the line between geology and architecture. The Yonaguni monument is a colossal formation of sandstone that rises from the seafloor like a sunken ziggurat. Discovered by a diver in 1986, its features are startlingly unnatural. The rock face is dominated by massive, flat terraces that drop in perfect, sequential steps. Sharp 90-degree angles define its corners, and long, straight channels run along its surface. There are what appear to be wide staircases, broad plazas, and even two towering pillars that look like they were placed to support a massive stone roof. The entire structure is a single, connected piece of bedrock, carved with a geometric precision that feels deliberate. The central question, one that has divided scientists for decades, is whether this is a miraculous work of nature or the handiwork of an ancient civilization. Geologists point to the area's frequent, powerful earthquakes, suggesting that the sandstone could have fractured along its natural planes, creating these deceptively artificial-looking shapes. They argue that nature is fully capable of producing straight lines and flat surfaces, yet the counter-argument is compelling. How does natural fracturing create a perfect 5-meter-wide staircase with steps of equal height and depth? How does it form two round, column-like holes side by side, features that look unmistakably like they were carved by tools? The sheer concentration of so many geometric forms in one place, the parallel faces, the right angles, the symmetrical terraces, defies the random chaos of natural erosion. If these structures are indeed artificial, their implications are staggering. The monument was last above water approximately 10,000 years ago, during the last ice age when global sea levels were dramatically lower. This places its possible construction in an era conventional history describes as the domain of primitive, nomadic hunter-gatherers. These people, we are told, were just beginning to experiment with basic agriculture and lived in simple, temporary settlements. They were not supposed to be capable of large-scale, organized quarrying or of executing such sophisticated stonework on a monolithic scale. To carve the Yonaguni monument, a society would have needed not just the labor force, but a profound understanding of stone masonry, architectural design, and perhaps even a system for working underwater if the carving continued as the seas rose. This single, submerged site forces us to confront a haunting possibility. Could there have been a lost coastal culture, a society with advanced engineering skills that flourished at the end of the last ice age, only to have its entire world swallowed by the oceans? The silent, water-worn stones of Yonaguni offer no easy answers, only a profound challenge to the story we tell ourselves about the rise of human civilization. Hidden beneath the quiet hills of Zhejiang province in China lies an underground empire of staggering ambition. The Longyou caves are not natural caverns, but 24 immense hand-carved grottos, each one a vast, echoing chamber spanning up to 12,000 square feet. To stand inside one is to feel a profound sense of awe and disbelief. The ceilings, some reaching 100 feet high, are held aloft by colossal, evenly spaced pillars that appear to be integral parts of the living rock. Every surface, from the walls to the soaring arches, is covered in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks, a mesmerizing texture that speaks of countless hours of coordinated labor. This was not a small-scale operation. The total volume of stone excavated from these hills is estimated at a mind-boggling 1 million cubic meters. Imagine a solid block of stone larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, meticulously carved out and removed piece by piece. The logistics are staggering, but the precision is what truly defies understanding. Despite being carved by hand over 2,000 years ago, the caves exhibit an almost machined uniformity. The walls between adjacent caverns maintain a consistent thickness, a feat that requires an incredible understanding of structural integrity to prevent collapse. The pillars are placed with mathematical regularity, bearing the immense weight of the hill above with perfect efficiency. Even the water that naturally seeps through the sandstone was accounted for. The builders integrated sophisticated, sloped drainage channels that direct water to carved pools, keeping the caverns remarkably dry for millennia. Who were these master engineers, and why did they undertake such a Herculean effort? The complete absence of any historical record is as baffling as the caves themselves. There are no scrolls, no carvings depicting their construction, not even a single legend or folk tale that mentions the creation of this subterranean world. They were completely unknown until 1992, when local farmers pumped out the water filling one of the sinkholes, revealing the entrance to this hidden realm. The silence of history is deafening. How could a project of this magnitude, requiring a workforce of thousands and a deep knowledge of geology and architecture, simply vanish from all memory? The engineering knowledge on display is profound. To plan and execute such a vast network of stable underground spaces without modern surveying tools, without even detailed blueprints, implies a level of technical and organizational capability that we do not typically grant to the ancient world. This was not a haphazard digging operation. It was a carefully orchestrated act of reverse architecture, carving not from the ground up but from the solid rock inward. What was the purpose of this colossal endeavor? Were they imperial tombs, secret warehouses, or perhaps a hidden sanctuary? The caves offer no answers, only the immense, silent testimony of their own existence, a masterpiece of engineering whose builders took their secrets with them. High on the arid Bolivian plateau, another andesite masterpiece stands in solitary silence. The Gate of the Sun is a single, monumental archway carved from a stone slab weighing 10 tons. Its surface is a frozen storm of intricate symbolism, a complex code etched in rock. At its center towers an imposing deity figure, often identified as the staff god, radiating power and authority. Flanking this central figure in perfect, symmetrical rows are 30 winged attendants, seemingly in mid-flight. Below them, 12 condor-headed figures complete this celestial court. This is not random decoration, it is a sophisticated language of time itself. Researchers studying the arrangement believe these 48 figures form an incredibly precise calendar system. The 30 winged beings likely represent the days of a lunar month, while the 12 condor heads may correspond to the 12 lunar cycles of a solar year. The entire composition appears to map a complex interlocking of lunar and solar time, a calendrical device accurate to within minutes per year. To achieve such astronomical precision, the Tiwanaku civilization must have engaged in centuries of meticulous sky observation, tracking the subtle dance of celestial bodies with an accuracy that rivals modern computations. They encoded this hard-won knowledge not on fragile parchment, but directly into one of the most durable stones on Earth. The andesite they used is phenomenally hard, a stone that would quickly destroy copper or bronze chisels. Yet the carvings are deep, crisp, and show no signs of tool slippage or error. The lines are clean, the curves smooth, and the details of each figure remain sharp after more than a millennium of exposure to the harsh altiplano winds. How did they achieve such flawless work without the benefit of iron tools? The methods are a complete mystery, leaving us with a stone calendar whose mechanical creation is as puzzling as its astronomical meaning. This gate was never just an entrance, it was a library and an observatory carved into a single, impossible block, a permanent record of a science we are only now beginning to decipher. Deep in the sweltering jungles of Mexico, the Olmec people confronted a puzzle of monumental weight. Scattered across their ancient heartland are 17 colossal stone heads, each one a brooding, powerful portrait carved from a single block of solid basalt. These are not small idols. The largest of them stands over 10 feet tall and weighs a staggering 50 tons, as much as a full-grown humpback whale. Their scowling lips, broad noses, and distinctive helmets convey a sense of raw, individualized power, suggesting they may be portraits of mighty rulers. The artistry is undeniable, but the true engineering mystery lies not in their creation, but in their journey. The basalt for these giants came from the Tuxtla Mountains, quarried from the volcanic rock of Cerro Sintepec. This source lies between 50 and 60 miles away from the sites where the heads were finally erected. Visualize that distance. It is the equivalent of transporting a stone whale across a marathon's length of some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. The route would have crossed raging rivers, dense, tangled jungle, and vast, waterlogged swamps. The Olmec accomplished this without the wheel, without metal tools to clear paths, and without any domesticated animals like oxen or horses to provide pulling power. So how did they do it? The most plausible theory involves a brilliant combination of water and human ingenuity. The quarried blocks, rough-hewn into a basic shape, were likely dragged on wooden sledges or rollers to the nearest river. From there, they could have been loaded onto immense, specially built rafts. Floating these multi-ton stones down river would have been a far more efficient method than dragging them overland, but it was not without immense risk. A single shift in weight, one poorly tied rope during a rapid, and the entire precious cargo would be lost to the riverbed. Once the waterway journey ended, the final overland trek to the ceremonial centers would have required a monumental effort of coordinated labor. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people would have been needed to pull the colossal heads on log rollers, inching them forward through the mud and jungle. Every single head had to make this epic trip without cracking, without sinking into the swamp, and without toppling over. This was more than an artistic endeavor. It was a supreme logistical operation that required generations of knowledge in physics, rope making, and project management. The silent, stoic faces of these heads are a testament to that lost knowledge, a permanent reminder of a civilization that could move mountains, one 50-ton portrait at a time. Deep within the crypts of an Egyptian temple, a stone panel tells a story that divides experts to this day. At the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, the walls are carved with scenes that seem to defy their own era. One series of reliefs shows colossal, elongated bulbs, each containing a snake writhing inside, its body held aloft by a pillar-like support. A cable, thick as a man's arm, appears to run from the base of this object and connects to a box upon which an Egyptian god rests his feet. To a modern eye, the resemblance to an electrical light bulb is startling. The snake takes the place of the glowing filament, the pillar is the insulator, the cable is the wire, and the box could be the power source. This interpretation is amplified by another architectural puzzle within the very same temple. In the deep, windowless underground chambers, where intricate and beautifully preserved paintings cover the walls and ceilings, there is a complete and total absence of soot. If the artists who worked here thousands of years ago used torches or oil lamps for light, their smoke would have left indelible black stains on the stone. Yet the colors remain pristine. This has led some to wonder, how did they see to create such masterpieces in the pitch black? Could the Dendera reliefs be a technical diagram for a form of electric lighting that illuminated these subterranean halls? Mainstream Egyptology offers a different, symbolic reading. They identify the objects not as bulbs, but as the blossoming of a lotus flower from the primordial waters, with the snake representing the cycle of life and the god Harsamtis. The cable is seen as a stylized lotus stem, and the entire scene is a well-known part of Egyptian mythology. This established explanation is logical and fits within the understood framework of ancient Egyptian belief. Yet, the sheer visual similarity and the practical problem of the soot-free chambers keep the debate alive. If it is just a symbolic flower, why does its design so perfectly mirror the components of an electrical system? The controversy forces a difficult question. Are we seeing what we want to see, projecting our modern world onto an ancient one? Or are we witnessing a rare, surviving clue to a technology that was known, used in specific, sacred contexts, and then lost for thousands of years? The carved stones offer no definitive proof, only a silent, persistent challenge to our assumptions about the limits of ancient knowledge. Buried in the fertile soil of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, hundreds of stone spheres lay hidden for centuries. Ranging from the size of a melon to colossal orbs over 6 feet across, these artifacts were carved by the Diquis culture between 300 and 800 years of the Common Era. Their most baffling feature is their geometric perfection. Crafted from incredibly hard gabbro, as well as limestone and sandstone, the spheres maintain a near-flawless roundness. Across their entire circumference, the surface variation is less than 2 centimeters. To put that into perspective, if you were to roll the largest of these spheres, its path would deviate less than the width of your thumb. Achieving this level of precision without modern laser measuring tools or metal instruments seems an impossible task. How do you shape a multi-ton block of stone into a perfect sphere using only stone hammers? The process remains a complete mystery. It would have required not just immense patience, but a sophisticated grasp of solid geometry and a systematic technique for constantly checking symmetry from every possible angle. The builders likely started by heating the stone with fire and then rapidly cooling it with water to create fractures, before painstakingly pecking and grinding it into shape. Yet this theory fails to fully explain the astounding consistency across hundreds of these objects. They were clearly produced according to a strict and universally understood standard, a form of mass production for perfect geometric forms. Even more puzzling is their purpose. Some spheres were found arranged in lines or geometric patterns, leading to theories they were astronomical markers, territorial boundaries, or symbols of celestial bodies. Others seem to have been moved and repositioned over time, suggesting their meaning or use was dynamic, not fixed. Why would a society invest such a colossal amount of collective labor into creating objects whose function remains so opaque to us? The spheres stand as silent, polished sentinels, representing a culture that valued an abstract ideal of perfection, an engineering principle carved in stone for reasons we can only guess. While the outer precision of the Great Pyramid is staggering, its true engineering genius lies hidden within the mountain of stone. Deep inside, a network of passageways and chambers was carved with a precision that defies the chaotic process of construction. The descending passage is a perfect example, a narrow tunnel that plunges down through the bedrock at an exact angle of 26.5 degrees. This was not a rough-hewn hole. For over 350 feet, this corridor maintains its perfect slope and trajectory, a feat that would be challenging with modern laser guides, let alone with the primitive tools we assume were available. The builders were working in near total darkness, unable to see the overall structure taking shape around them. A single miscalculation at the start, an error of just a fraction of a degree, would have meant the passage missing its target entirely, ending up dozens of feet off course by the time it reached its destination. This implies they possessed a master plan, a three-dimensional blueprint held in their minds or on papyrus that has long since turned to dust, and the surveying technology to execute it flawlessly. Higher up within the pyramid's core, the mystery only deepens. The king's chamber is built from enormous blocks of red granite, a stone so hard it can only be cut with diamond-tipped tools today. Above this chamber, the builders constructed a series of 5 compartments now called the relieving chambers. These were not rooms for storage or ritual, but a brilliant structural solution. They are designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's upper layers, diverting millions of tons of crushing force around the hollow chamber below, preventing its ceiling from collapsing. This demonstrates a profound understanding of load-bearing physics, an architectural principle that seems centuries ahead of its time. Then there are the so-called air shafts, narrow channels that extend from the king's and queen's chambers to the outer surface. These are not simple ventilation ducts. Their alignment is far too precise for that. The southern shaft from the king's chamber was targeted directly at the belt of the constellation Orion, while the northern one pointed toward the circumpolar star Alpha Draconis. This means the pyramid's internal architecture was locked into the very movements of the night sky. To achieve this, the builders had to calculate these celestial angles and then embed the shafts into the structure as it rose, course by course, ensuring they would emerge at exactly the right point on the finished surface. How could they possibly plan and build such complex internal features while simultaneously managing the construction of the colossal outer shell? The pyramid was not built around a finished interior. The interior was built as the pyramid grew, a simultaneous act of creation that required foresight and coordination on a scale we can barely comprehend. This internal labyrinth, with its perfect angles and celestial alignments, stands as a testament to a lost school of engineering, one that seamlessly blended architecture with astronomy, all within the perpetual darkness of a rising mountain of stone. Scattered across the hills of Scotland and France stand the crumbling remains of ancient forts with a bizarre secret. Their stone ramparts are not simply stacked, but fused together into a solid, glassy mass. This is the phenomenon of vitrified forts, where granite and other rocks have been melted and resolidified, transforming into a substance akin to crude glass. To achieve this, the walls had to be subjected to a sustained, infernal heat of approximately 1,100 degrees Celsius. That is the temperature of a modern industrial smelter, a level of heat far beyond the reach of a simple bonfire or even a catastrophic accidental blaze. How could Iron Age societies over 2,000 years ago generate and contain such immense thermal energy? The very existence of these 60 known sites presents a trio of puzzling possibilities. The first theory suggests these forts were destroyed by a deliberate, overwhelming enemy attack, one that involved piling vast amounts of wood against the walls and burning them for days. Yet experimental archaeology has struggled to make this work. When researchers try to replicate the effect using only wood and the presumed ancient methods, the results are inconsistent and localized, failing to produce the widespread, uniform vitrification seen in the actual ruins. The second theory proposes the opposite, that the vitrification was intentional. Perhaps the builders themselves used fire to deliberately weld their ramparts into a single, indestructible sheet of stone, creating a defensive barrier far stronger than any dry stack wall. But this introduces another puzzle. Why would they go to such extraordinary, fuel-intensive lengths when a simple stone wall was already a formidable defense? The process would have required an almost unimaginable quantity of timber and a precise understanding of how to manage the heat flow to fuse the entire structure without causing a catastrophic collapse. This leads to a more speculative third possibility. Could there have been a lost, or at least uncommon, technology at play? Some have wondered about the use of specialized fuels or chemical accelerants that could have dramatically intensified the heat, a form of ancient pyrotechnical knowledge that has since vanished from the historical record. The vitrified forts stand as silent, glazed sentinels, their melted stones testifying to a controlled, monumental application of fire whose true purpose and method remain stubbornly out of reach, another piece of a technological puzzle we have not yet solved. Among the dusty artifacts unearthed from ancient Iraq, a simple clay pot seems entirely unremarkable. Yet this humble jar, dating back 2,000 years, contains a secret that could rewrite the history of invention. Inside, archaeologists found a copper cylinder carefully sealed with asphalt, and within that cylinder, an iron rod. It looks for all the world like a primitive battery. When this vessel is filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, a chemical reaction occurs between the two different metals and the electrolyte. This creates a small but measurable electrical charge, producing around 1 volt of power. This is the Baghdad Battery, a find that challenges our entire understanding of ancient technological progress. The official explanation from mainstream archaeology is that these jars were used for storing sacred scrolls or perhaps for electroplating jewelry with gold, a process that requires a small electrical current. But if that is the case, why the intricate, sealed design with 2 specific metals? The configuration is a textbook example of a galvanic cell, the fundamental principle behind every modern battery. It is a simple yet effective power source. The obvious question is, what would an ancient civilization do with 1 volt of electricity? A single jar produces a faint tingle, little more than a curiosity. But if you were to link dozens of these jars together in a series, you could generate a significant charge, enough for electroplating, medical therapy, or even religious ceremonies to create a sense of mystical awe. The absence of connecting wires or other electrical apparatus in the archaeological record is the primary argument against the battery theory. Without wires, how would the energy be transferred? Yet it is possible that such components were made of perishable materials like hemp or papyrus, coated in a conductive substance like gold, which would have decayed into dust long ago. The true purpose of these jars may never be known for certain. Were they sacred objects, scientific tools, or something else entirely? They stand as a quiet, potent symbol of a lost spark, a flicker of knowledge that the ancient world may have held, and that we are only now, 2 millennia later, struggling to rekindle. A single man, working in secret, achieved what we believe required armies of ancient laborers. The Coral Castle in Florida is a sprawling complex of monolithic coral rock sculptures, its total weight exceeding 1,000 tons. Its creator was Edward Leedskalnin, a man of slight build who stood only 5 feet tall and weighed 100 pounds. Between 1923 and 1951, he single-handedly quarried, carved, and positioned these enormous stones using tools that appeared little more than old car parts, chains, and tripods. He claimed he had uncovered the building secrets of the Egyptians and the pyramid builders, and he guarded his methods with obsessive secrecy, working almost exclusively under the cover of darkness and threatening anyone who tried to watch. The results are a testament to a seemingly impossible personal feat. He moved blocks of stone weighing up to 30 tons, the equivalent of 3 large trucks, across his property and set them into place with astonishing precision. The most famous example is a 9-ton stone gate, perfectly balanced on a simple truck axle. This massive door is so exquisitely balanced that even a child can push it open with a single finger, and it once rotated so freely that it took a team of engineers 5 days to stop it after the pivot mechanism was finally seized in the 1980s. This is not just a quirky display of strength, it is a masterclass in applied physics, demonstrating a profound, intuitive understanding of leverage, center of mass, and counterweight that rivals modern mechanical engineering. Lidskalnin insisted he was not using magic but knowledge. He spoke of understanding the laws of weight and leverage, and claimed to know how the Egyptians and the ancient builders of Peru had moved their stones. His success, achieved in the modern era with primitive-looking tools, forces a difficult question. If one man, without formal education or modern machinery, could rediscover and apply these principles, does that suggest the great monuments of antiquity were built not through unimaginable brute force, but through a sophisticated and perhaps lost science of stone? The Coral Castle stands as a modern, tangible clue, a living experiment that proves the techniques behind the world's oldest engineering mysteries might be more accessible and more brilliant than we ever dared to believe. Carved high on a temple wall at Abydos, a panel of hieroglyphs presents a riddle that seems to defy time itself. Among the traditional symbols of scarabs and gods, a cluster of images stands out with jarring modernity. One clearly resembles a helicopter, complete with a cockpit and a rotor. Beside it, you can make out the shape of what looks like a submarine, a tank, and even a futuristic aircraft. These carvings date back to the reign of Pharaoh Seti I, over 3,000 years ago. The official archaeological explanation is one of layered history, not lost technology. The theory is that these are palimpsests, a result of practical recycling. The original carvings, likely the standard royal titles and symbols of Seti, were later plastered over by his son, Ramses II, who carved his own inscriptions into the fresh surface. Over centuries, the plaster fell away, and the erosion of the softer stone beneath created a composite image, where parts of the older and newer hieroglyphs merged. What we see as a helicopter is, in this view, simply the chance overlap of a reed leaf, an arm, and other ordinary symbols. It is a fascinating accident of preservation. Yet the coincidence is so precise, so visually compelling, that it continues to spark intense debate. How could random erosion produce such a clean, recognizable silhouette of machines that would not be invented for another 3 millennia? The human brain is wired to find patterns, especially familiar ones, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, where we see faces in clouds or shapes in the stars. This is the most likely culprit, our own modern minds projecting our world onto the ancient one. But the mystery lingers because it touches on a deeper question about the limits of our understanding. Could these carvings be a rare, garbled echo of a technology that was known, then lost? The Abydos helicopter forces us to confront the possibility that our interpretation of the past is limited by our own assumptions. We see what we expect to see, and perhaps we are missing the true meaning of artifacts because we lack the context to understand them. This temple wall is more than a curiosity. It is a mirror, reflecting our own desire to find lost knowledge in the silent stones of history. From the cryptic carvings of Abydos, we travel to a small private museum in Peru, home to one of the most perplexing and controversial collections in the world. The Ica stones are a library of contradictions, thousands of andesite rocks intricately engraved with scenes that seem to tear up the history books. On their dark, polished surfaces, human figures are shown living alongside creatures we would instantly recognize as dinosaurs, some even appearing to ride on the backs of these giants. Other stones depict what can only be described as advanced medical procedures, including detailed heart surgeries and cesarean sections performed with precision. The sheer volume of these carvings is staggering, creating a narrative that directly challenges our established timeline of life on Earth. If these stones are genuine ancient artifacts, they suggest a past where humanity possessed not only a familiarity with long-extinct animals, but also a sophisticated knowledge of biology and medicine. The most compelling argument for a hoax comes from a local farmer who, in the 1970s, claimed he and his family had carved the stones themselves to sell to tourists. He demonstrated the technique using a dental drill and claiming he copied the designs from comic books and magazines. This confession seems to settle the matter, yet it cannot entirely erase the lingering questions. How did an uneducated farmer consistently replicate the complex, weathered patina that experts confirmed was in the engraved lines, a sign of significant age? And why would he create thousands of these stones, filling an entire museum with a hoax of such monumental scale? This controversy forces us to consider a more nuanced possibility. Could some of these stones be authentic ancient artifacts, while others are later copies or outright fakes? Perhaps the original stones were created by a civilization that had discovered massive fossil beds. Confronted with the enormous bones of creatures like Triceratops or Stegosaurus, ancient artists might have attempted to illustrate these beasts based on the skeletons they unearthed, integrating them into their own worldview and mythology. This would explain the seemingly anachronistic coexistence of humans and dinosaurs not as literal history, but as an ancient interpretation of paleontological evidence. Beyond the dinosaurs, other stones carry depictions that are harder to dismiss as imaginative fossil reconstructions. Some show figures using what looks remarkably like a telescope to observe the stars, suggesting a knowledge of optics and astronomy. Others appear to display detailed world maps that show landmasses in configurations that should have been unknown to any ancient culture in the Americas. These particular images hint at a potential for advanced geographical and astronomical understanding that, if real, would be revolutionary. The enduring puzzle of the Ica stones serves as a powerful lesson in the study of ancient mysteries. It highlights the immense difficulty in separating genuine archaeological anomalies from clever forgeries, especially when there is a market for the sensational. Yet, even if the entire collection is a modern fabrication, its existence underscores a profound truth about our relationship with the past. Our understanding of ancient technological capabilities is not a closed book, but a story that is constantly being rewritten with each new discovery. These stones, whether ancient art or modern cunning, remind us that the boundaries of history are far more fluid than we might like to believe. The silent stone faces of the Moai are not the only mystery left by the Rapa Nui people. In the 19th century, wooden tablets covered in strange, fluid glyphs began to emerge from the island. This is the Rongorongo Script, the only indigenous writing system known to have developed anywhere in Oceania before the modern era. Unlike the monumental statues, these artifacts are small and intimate, their surfaces carved with a precise, repeating sequence of symbols. Birds, celestial bodies, and intricate geometric forms are arranged in neat lines that alternate direction, a writing method known as reverse boustrafedin. The sheer orderliness of the script suggests it is more than decorative art. It is a systematic recording of information. What kind of knowledge was so vital it had to be carved into wood? Some researchers studying the glyphs propose a radical idea. They speculate that these tablets could be technical manuals, encoding the very engineering principles needed to create the Moai. The precise angles for carving, the complex rope arrangements for the walking method of transport, the astronomical alignments for positioning the platforms, all of this could be captured within the symbols. The repetitive nature of the glyphs might represent formulas or step-by-step instructions, a lost code for moving mountains. If this theory holds true, then the Rongorongo Script is not merely writing, it is a library of applied physics. Yet the code remains unbroken. The decline of the Rapa Nui civilization, spurred by ecological change and cultural disruption, severed the living connection to this knowledge. The last people who could read the glyphs were taken from the island in the 1860s, and the meaning died with them. Today, the undeciphered tablets represent a profound loss, a silent whisper of the sophisticated intellectual framework that must have underpinned one of history's most staggering logistical achievements. They are a haunting reminder that a civilization's greatest secrets are not always carved in stone, but sometimes etched onto fragile wood, waiting for a key we may never find. This seamless interlocking of stone becomes almost supernatural at the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Here, the walls are a colossal jigsaw puzzle carved from limestone blocks, some heavier than 300 tons. Each stone is a unique, irregular polygon, a shape with multiple sides and angles that would be a nightmare for any modern architect to calculate. Yet they fit together in 3 dimensions, with concave surfaces perfectly cupping convex ones, and complex notches locking into corresponding protrusions on the stones above and below. The contact is so intimate that the fit is not merely airtight, it is paper-thin. In countless places along these walls, you genuinely cannot force a single sheet of paper into the seam. This is not just careful craftsmanship, it is a level of precision that feels machined. How could this be achieved with the tools historians assure us were available? The official narrative tells us the Inca used stone hammers and simple bronze chisels, but try to imagine using a stone hammer to carve a delicate, curved hollow into the face of a 100-ton boulder. One misplaced strike would shatter the edge, ruining months of work. There are no tool marks, no signs of trial and error, no chisel grooves. The surfaces are flawlessly smooth, as if the stone itself was softened like clay and then pressed into place. This has led to a radical and persistent theory. Could the builders have possessed a plant-based chemical compound, a lost solvent that temporarily softened the surface of the limestone, allowing them to mold it and achieve this plastic, custom fit? It is a speculative idea, but the alternative that they did this with pounding stones seems equally fantastical. The ultimate proof of their genius is written in the seismic history of Peru. This region is plagued by powerful earthquakes, and the Spanish colonists learned this the hard way. They built their own structures right beside the ancient walls, using squared stones and plenty of mortar. When the earth shook, the Spanish buildings crumbled. The Inca walls of Sacsayhuaman, however, simply swayed and settled. The complex, interlocking joints and the absence of rigid mortar allowed the entire structure to move as a single, flexible unit, dancing with the tremors rather than fighting them. The wall was designed to be earthquake-proof, a feat of engineering that our modern constructions still strive to achieve. This was more than a fortress, it was a monumental lesson in physics, carved in stone by masters whose methods remain locked within the silent, perfect seams. Rising from the shallow lagoon like a forgotten Atlantis, the city of Nan Madol is a maze of stone and water. This was a Venice built not on mud but on sheer engineering will. 92 artificial islands stretch across the reef, each one a man-made platform constructed from colossal basalt logs. These are not simple stones. They are prismatic columns, naturally formed by cooling lava into crystalline shapes with 5 or 6 sides. The builders of the Sordelor dynasty harvested these multi-ton columns and stacked them in a crisscross pattern, like a colossal game of log cabin building. to create stable foundations that could resist the constant push and pull of the Pacific tides. The result is a grid of canals and islets, a city that seems to float on the sea itself. The staggering challenge was the journey of the stone. These basalt logs, some weighing 50 tons, were quarried from the opposite side of Pohnpei Island. Visualize moving a stone heavier than a tank through dense, mountainous jungle and across treacherous reefs, all without the wheel, without metal tools, and without any beasts of burden to pull them. The prevailing theory is that they used a combination of rafts and ropes, floating the massive columns on bamboo pontoons during high tide and maneuvering them through the intricate network of canals. Yet the sheer volume of material is overwhelming. Estimates suggest that over 750 million pounds of stone were moved to create this aquatic capital. For a small island society, this project would have consumed every available resource for generations. Why commit to such a Herculean effort? The precision and scale of Nan Madol seem completely disproportionate to the needs of a simple island chiefdom. Its largest structures are imposing tombs and ceremonial spaces, suggesting it was a center of immense political and spiritual power. The city's very existence forces us to reconsider the capabilities of Pacific Island societies. This was not a village of thatched huts, but a coordinated, monumental effort that rivals the great public works of the ancient world. How did the Sordelor dynasty command the labor and the technical knowledge to achieve this? The silent, water-logged ruins offer no written records, only the enduring mystery of their foundations, a city built on impossible weight, defying the sea and our understanding for centuries. The silent, waterlogged stones of Nan Madol give way to a different kind of preservation in the heart of Asia's driest deserts. Within the Tarim Basin, the arid sands surrendered a secret that rewrites the story of ancient migration and material science. These are the Tarim Basin mummies, individuals buried for 4,000 years, yet their features remain so intact you can see the intricate patterns of their clothing and the European cast of their faces. They were not intentionally mummified like the Egyptian pharaohs. No organs were removed, no resins used. They were simply laid to rest in the dry ground. The astonishing preservation is a mystery in itself. While the desert air is dry, ordinary decay should have taken a far greater toll over 4 millennia. This suggests their burial practices may have incorporated a subtle, lost knowledge of local conditions, a way of sealing the graves or preparing the bodies to perfectly harness the environment's natural preservative power, creating a time capsule effect we do not fully understand. Their clothing tells an equally compelling story. They were buried in sophisticated textiles of woven wool and felt, displaying complex plaid patterns and brilliant colors that have defied the fading power of centuries. The vibrant crimsons and deep blues retained their richness, indicating the use of advanced, long-lasting dyes and weaving techniques that should not have existed in that region at that time. This was not crude, utilitarian cloth. It was a display of high-status, technologically advanced material culture. The combination is what makes the mummies so revolutionary. Their physical anthropology points to origins thousands of miles to the west, while their clothing demonstrates a mastery of textile science. This forces a profound question about the Bronze Age world. Was there a web of technological exchange stretching across continents, where knowledge of dyes, weaving, and even preservation techniques traveled along routes we are only now beginning to map? These mummies are not just remarkably preserved people, they are a frozen moment in time, showcasing a forgotten chapter of material innovation that rivals the grandest stones in its silent, elegant complexity.